Hey everybody, welcome to Britpop Reaction with BP1 and BP2.
Good
we
to
are
be
here with a reaction request from the lovely Firefighter Chick.
Here we are.
She's asked us to react to the story of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Yes, so without sort of any spoiler alerts, it's the historic funerary monument dedicated to deceased US service members whose remains have not yet been identified, located in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia, United States. We, of course, in the UK have also the Tomb of the Unknown Warrior, located at Westminster Abbey in the Chapel of the Holy, contains the remains of an unknown warrior. And again, used to sort of mark and respect those who sort of died fighting wars and who haven't been found.
No, indeed, far too many. All right, let's crack on.
Okay.
Not every soldier is recognized for his heroic actions. Indeed, one of the countless tragedies of war is that the bodies of many soldiers are never even identified. On August 3rd, 1956, 3 years after the end of the Korean War, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a bill to select and pay tribute to the unknown soldiers of the Korean War and World War II. These soldiers would be buried in the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington National Cemetery. The Tomb of the Unknowns was created in response to the mass casualties of World War I. The idea of honoring the unknown dead, of which there were so many in World War I, began in Great Britain in 1920. Then, in March 1921, the U.S. Congress approved a plan to return the body of an unknown American soldier from the war and bury him with full honors in a tomb to be constructed at the Memorial Amphitheater in Arlington National Cemetery. On Memorial Day, 1921,
Look at that picture.
4 unknown soldiers were exhumed from 4 World War I American cemeteries in France. They were placed in 4 identical caskets and set before a highly decorated veteran of that war, U.S. Army Sergeant Edward F. Younger. Sergeant Younger ceremonially selected 1 casket. He later spoke of his decision.
I was left alone in the chapel. There were 4 coffins, all unmarked and unnamed. The one that I placed the roses on would be the one brought home and placed in the National Shrine. I walked around the coffins 3 times. Then suddenly I stopped. What caused me to stop, I don't know. It was as though something had pulled me. I placed the roses on the coffin in front of me. I can still remember the odd feeling that I had, standing there alone.
The chosen unknown was transported to the United States aboard the USS Olympia.
Okay.
Those remaining were interred in the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery, France. The selected unknown lay in state at the Capitol Rotunda until midnight on November 10th, 1921. On November 11th, Armistice Day, the casket of that unknown soldier was carried from the Rotunda to Arlington National Cemetery under a military escort. Behind the caisson bearing the flag-draped casket walked President Harding, Vice President Coolidge, Chief Justice Taft, and the other justices of the Supreme Court, members of the Cabinet, Senate, and...
Just to briefly stop it. It's quite moving, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, you know.
To be an unknown soldier.
Yep.
You think surely someone must know who it was, but I guess if you can't identify,
in the fog of war, yeah, you know, and I'm not quite sure when sort of dog tags obviously started to come into circulation. So obviously the idea of dog tags is you get two, one that you leave with the body, then you take one of them, so that then you can hand that in to say, and if anybody obviously finds the body, they can recognize who that is, service name, rank, and number on there. But of course, I mean, you saw the state of that picture of World War One. I mean, that was just carnage back
Oh,
then, wasn't
it's
it? You
just
know, so
awful. Yeah.
of course you haven't got DNA tests or anything like that. If you can't physically recognize who it is, and
No.
it's not like it's one or two. There were hundreds there, weren't there, lying
Well,
in,
this is
in
it.
America? Yeah. So, but as I say, just to sort of put something out there, recognize all of them in a simple way, really, and have somewhere that members of the family can sort of go and lay wreaths and things like that at home.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
special,
To
yeah.
have some sort of
Closure.
closure, innit? Yeah.
Yeah.
And to think that most of those people or families are probably also passed away by now, certainly from World War One. So
Indeed, yeah.
mad. All right.
And
let's
House
keep-
of Representatives, generals and other distinguished officers from America's wars and recipients of the Medal of Honor. President Harding officiated at the interment ceremonies at the Memorial Amphitheater at Arlington National Cemetery. He conferred upon the unknown soldier the Medal of Honor and the Distinguished Service Cross. Representatives of foreign governments allied with the U.S. in World War I participated as well, bestowing upon the unknown their own highest military awards. The United States reciprocated this gesture, honoring an unknown soldier from nations of France, Great Britain, Belgium, Italy, and Romania with the Medal of Honor. In the history of the Medal of Honor, these are the only 5 instances in which the award was presented to a foreign soldier. After World War II, plans were made for the selection and burial of an unknown from that war. But fighting in Korea broke out before the selection process had begun.
Gotcha.
The decision was made to postpone until a more appropriate time.
Wow.
That time turned out to be 1958, when unknowns from World War II and the Korean War were selected for burial in the Tomb of the Unknowns. The final selection of the unknown from the Korean War took place on May 15th, 1958. All of the unknown war dead from that war had been buried in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. In that place, 4 candidates for burial in the Tomb of the Unknowns were placed in identical caskets, draped with American flags. Master Sergeant Ned Lyle, a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross for heroic action in Korea, was designated to make the final selection. He placed a wreath of blue and white carnations on one casket and saluted the remains of the soldier inside. The selection of the World War II unknown took place 11 days later aboard the USS Canberra. Earlier stages of the selection process had resulted in 1 remaining candidate from the European Theater of Operations and 1 candidate from the Pacific Theater. Hospital Corpsman First Class William R. Charette, recipient of the Medal of Honor for actions in the Korean War, made the final selection. The selected unknown, along with the unknown from the Korean War, arrived in Washington on May 28th, 1958.
Yeah.
They lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda until 1 p.m. on May 30th. As the procession moved toward Arlington National Cemetery, the 2 caissons, each carrying 1 unknown, traveled side by side. When they reached the cemetery, they shifted into a column led by the caisson bearing the World War II unknown soldier. As the caissons entered the cemetery, 20 jet fighters and bombers passed overhead, with 1 plane missing from each formation. The casket of the World War II unknown soldier was placed in front of President Eisenhower, and the Korean War unknown soldier in front of Vice President Nixon. The Marine Band played the national anthem, and then a bugler sounded attention 3 times. After a long moment of silence, President Eisenhower placed a Medal of Honor on each casket. The unknowns of World War II and the Korean War were interred in the plaza beside their World War I comrade. The tomb sarcophagus was placed above the grave of the unknown soldier of World War I in April 1931. The sarcophagus is constructed of 7 rectangular pieces of white marble, together weighing 79 tons. On the west panel of the sarcophagus, facing the amphitheater, are the words, "Here rests, in honored glory, an American soldier, known but to God."
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, put a lot of respect and thought and effort into the interment and all of that, didn't they? So
Absolutely,
fair play on
yeah.
them. I mean,
Yeah, it
know how
wasn't
to
just
do
a
that well.
recognition, was it? I mean, there's so much
Full
more.
ceremony.
Full ceremony, the Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm not quite clear on is the selection process that he mentioned a couple of times. So is that when he says that? I mean, how many? What are they selecting at that point? Obviously, the soldiers to bring back, right?
The remains of one soldier to come back to home soil and be interred
of one soldier. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But there must be lots, right?
Yeah. But I mean, so there was 4 coffins there, and then they, each of those soldiers designated sort of had to have the final sort of say. I mean, that must have lived with them quite a long time as well, having to sort of just pick one to come back to the home soil. The other 3 would have been then buried in marked graves or unknown where they were, sort of Korea and France, etc.
Wow. But super impressive, a massive monument there as well.
Yes, yeah.
Isn't it a very impressive way to remember
structure? Yes, indeed.
Which is cool. All right, we'll keep going.
On the east panel, facing the Capitol, 3 Greek figures have been sculpted. On the left stands Peace, holding a dove in one hand. On the right stands Valor, bearing a broken sword in his hands. In the center stands Victory, holding hands with Peace while extending an olive branch to Valor. The north and south panels present a total of 6 inverted wreaths, each representing a major campaign of World War I. West of the sarcophagus are the crypts of unknowns from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Those 3 graves are marked with white marble slabs that lie flush with the plaza.
Oh, yeah, down there.
Since April 6, 1948, the tomb of the unknown soldier has been guarded 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, regardless of weather. In blazing sun, freezing snow, and even in the face of hurricanes, the sentinels continue their watch. The sentinels, members of the 3rd Infantry, or Old Guard, are famous for the precision of their march and changing of the guard. The sentinel marches 21 steps across a black mat, past the crypts of each unknown. He then makes a crisp 90-degree turn to face east for 21 seconds. He then makes another 90-degree turn, facing north for 21 seconds. A crisp shoulder arms movement places the rifle on the shoulder nearest the visitors to signify that the sentinel stands between the tomb and any threat. After that moment, the sentinel paces 21 steps north, turns, and repeats the process. Every hour during the winter, and every half hour during summer daylight hours, the sentinels conduct the changing of the guard ceremony.
Wow.
As the new sentinel approaches the relief commander, slowly and with great precision, conducts a white glove inspection of the Sentinel's weapon. The two then march to the center of the mat, where the active Sentinel stops his walk, and all three men salute the tomb.
Wow.
The relief commander instructs the active Sentinel, "Pass on your orders." The Sentinel replies, "Post and orders remain as directed." The relieving Sentinel responds, "Orders acknowledged." The relieving Sentinel then steps into position at the center of the black mat. The relief commander and relieved Sentinel exit, and the new Sentinel begins his march.
Very precise, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
unknown soldiers serve to remind us that not all actions of valor are witnessed and recorded in war. We do not know the stories of these men, but we know they gave their lives in a war they did not start to protect the freedom of people who would never know their names. They demonstrate the courage and heroism of every man and woman who goes into combat in service of their nation.
Yeah, some twigs.
They will face threats we can hardly
I'm gonna say
imagine
that.
in an attempt
It's crazy,
to
isn't it?
eliminate the dangers that are posed
Going over the
to the
top,
men
that
in
is,
the
isn't it?
trench beside
Yeah,
them.
worst tactics ever, that one. Well, that was very, very interesting indeed.
It was very, very in depth and
Yeah, well
something
presented.
we're totally not aware of.
No, I mean, obviously, you know, I know of the tomb, and I knew that about the Sentinels. I didn't quite realise it was sort of 365 days, every half hour, during summer, every hour. They march up and down.
Yeah.
But again, you know,
mad.
it's
That's like
showing
guarding our
remarkable-
royal family,
yeah.
isn't it?
it is indeed, yeah. And I mean, you know, it sounds like a huge effort, but nothing in the comparison to what the guys that gave their lives to. So it's showing a massive respect there.
No.
That, you know, they're still sort of watched over even after. I mentioned earlier on about the dog tags, and I wasn't quite sure how long they've been around. First seen in 1870 by the Prussian army, used by then, all the way back then. British Army started using them in 1907, First World War.
Wow.
Yes, there you go. Thank you very much, Firefighter Chick, for that recommendation. And again, learned something new today. Learned quite a lot new today. So very impressed. Good day when you learn something.
Yeah, great. So much more. Yeah, and this is great, the little nuggets of not known. And that was really detailed, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm,
really
yes,
detailed.
very. Yeah.
So a lot of effort's gone into that. Lionheart Filmworks did that one. So yeah, thank you very much for sending that across to us to check out.
And it was done in a very concise way that you know, just the information you needed to take in, not too long. So it was, you know, very good job by them. Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Unlike
thank you
us.
for joining us today at BritPops React for History Reaction. Till tomorrow,
Yes.
we'll have another reaction for you. Until then, it's goodbye from me over there.
Goodbye from him over there. You know who he is.
Wow.
Cheers. What is going on?